You will not believe what happened to me recently. The HOA actually forced me to cut down my tree, my beautiful, decades-old tree that shaded my entire backyard and was basically the heart of my home. And the reason? Apparently it didn't meet some arbitrary HOA rule, and they just didn't care how much it meant to me. But here, where it gets even crazier. My neighbor, let us just call her Karen, was the one pushing this the hardest. She acted like she owned the neighborhood, constantly nagging, complaining, and making life difficult for anyone who dared to enjoy their property. So naturally, I was furious. But I didn't want to just sit there and take it. I knew I had to come up with a way to respond that was clever, satisfying, and completely legal. And let me tell you, what I ended up doing. Well, it turned out to be way more dramatic than anyone expected. By the end of this video, you'll see how the tables turned completely, and how a little creativity can sometimes make HOA justice feel really sweet. But before we get to that, let me show you exactly how this whole tree nightmare started, how Karen got involved, and why this conflict escalated faster than I ever imagined. Trust me, this is one story you'll want to stick around for. You're going to see the perfect mix of HOA chaos, neighbor drama, and the kind of satisfying payoff you only dream about. So here's how it all started. My tree wasn't just any tree, it was massive, beautiful, and gave my backyard this perfect shade that made summer afternoons actually bearable. I planted it years ago, and it had become kind of the centerpiece of my property. But apparently, the HOA didn't see it that way. One morning, I got a notice slipped under my door. It was one of those classic HOA letters, all formal and intimidating, saying that my tree was non-compliant and that I had to cut it down immediately. I couldn't believe it. I mean, who writes rules like that, and who actually enforces them like it's a life or death matter? But what made it worse was Karen. She'd been eyeing my yard for months, always sneaking looks, always making snide comments about my landscaping, and now she was basically on the HOA's side, pushing me to remove something that I loved. I tried reasoning with her at first, emails, polite knocks on the door, even inviting her to look at the tree, but, of course, she just rolled her eyes and acted like she was doing me a favor by reporting me. That's when I realized I couldn't let this slide. I needed a plan, but I wanted it to be smart. I didn't want to break any laws. I didn't want to start a full-on neighborhood war, but I did want to send a clear message that bullying neighbors don't get to call all the shots. So I started thinking, what does Karen love most? What's her weak spot? That's right, her backyard pool. The same pool she brags about nonstop to anyone who walks by. And that's when the idea hit me. If she can force me to remove something I care about, maybe I can turn the tables in a way that's perfectly fair. I started doing some research, talking to contractors, and yes, double-checking the HOA rules so that I wouldn't cross any lines. Everything had to be precise, everything had to be legal, and everything had to be satisfying. And let me tell you, the anticipation of what was about to happen, it felt like I was in one of those movies where the underdog finally gets a moment to shine. Fast forward a little, and here's what went down. I approached Karen, but this time, it wasn't to argue, it was to offer a deal. I told her that if she really wanted to see compliance and fairness, she could start by taking action on something she'd neglected for years. And yes, that meant her pool, which had been sitting half-drained, partially broken, and completely unused for months. I presented it calmly, backed by HOA guidelines and some local codes that she had overlooked. At first, she scoffed. Of course she didn't take me seriously, but I kept my cool and laid out everything clearly. And then, the most satisfying part happened. She couldn't argue. The rules were on my side. And slowly, she had no choice but to fill in her pool. Watching that unfold was almost surreal, her frustration. My neighbors peeking over their fences, and me trying not to laugh too hard while it all happened. Afterwards, the aftermath was even better than I imagined. I still had to cut down my tree. It hurt. I won Tila, but seeing her finally deal with her own neglected property felt like the universe finally balancing the scales. I got messages from neighbors saying they loved how I handled it, some even sharing their own HOA horror stories, and it turned into this whole little community moment. And here's the thing I want you to take away. Dealing with HOA issues and difficult neighbors is frustrating, but staying smart, knowing the rules, and thinking creatively can turn even the most stressful situation into a win. You don't have to be aggressive or mean, you just have to be strategic. And trust me, Karen probably won't forget this lesson anytime soon. So that's the story how a forced tree removal led to one of the most satisfying neighborhood paybacks I've ever experienced. If you've ever had to deal with HOA headaches or impossible neighbors, you know how tense things can get. And honestly, sometimes the best way to deal with it is a mix of patience, creativity, and a little bit of dramatic flair. It's not about revenge, it's about balance, fairness, and knowing when to stand your ground. And if nothing else, it makes for one heck of a story to tell your friends. Before we wrap up, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a neighbor or HOA push you too far? What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Comment below. I read every story, and trust me, some of these HOA tales are even crazier than mine. And if you liked watching this, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications because I've got more wild neighborhood stories coming your way, stories that prove the old saying is true. Sometimes, the best way to fight back is with brains, patience, and a little bit of creativity. So that's it. The tree is gone. Karen's pool is filled, and justice, in the quirkiest way possible, was served. Remember, you don't have to stoop to anyone else's level to win. Stay smart, stay clever, and sometimes the universe has a funny way of balancing things out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story. Trust me, you don't want to miss it.